information, first of all, is a fundamental human right. Yeah, Uganda has ratified many of these international conventions from the UN and the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights. So access to information is a key fundamental right for every citizen or every person in the world. And its impact to a person or to a growth of the nation is also immense. Yeah, you look at, if at all, I'm just giving you an example of COVID. If we denied access to information on COVID, how could you imagine the catastrophe that we would be in as a country? So we believe each and every citizen has a right to obtain and access each and every information, because they could use that information for their personal growth. They could use that information for research. They could use that information to understand their ecosystem and the surrounding environment. If you know that there is something happening, let's say in Ntinda, then you could avoid it. But if at all you don't know anything that is happening around your area or your environment, you could fall into a very big catastrophe. So we believe that access to information is your right. And as government has done a lot in trying to promote this or trying to avail this by enacting a number of laws. We have the Access to Information Act 2005, and there are also other institutional amendments and legal policy and other frameworks that have been enacted by the country. You look at the enactment of the UCC Act, that brought into existence of the Uganda Communications Commission, which is the regulator of the communication subsector. You've seen Ministry of ICT and National Guidance now coming up. You've seen NITA, National IT Authority. All these, you've seen the Media Center. All these are mandatory institutions that provide access to information, which is a human fundamental right.
All right. Yeah. And if you look at in a way of sustainable development, one may ask, how does information actually get in contact with the fundamental development in the country?
Now, I want to give you an example. If the president has been trying to urge Ugandans and also the private sector to look through much into foreign direct investments. These are investments from overseas, the investors, the multinational companies that come in here. If they don't have information, they will never invest in this country. Because if they know that Uganda is not secure, they will never come here. But if Uganda is secure and they can access that information, they can access information on taxes, they can access information on exemptions, like tax exemptions, the tax holidays, then they know the actual environment, the business environment in the country. What are the ease, like the rankings of this country on ease of doing business. Now, if they can obtain this information, then they will do right and meaningful decisions of investing into a country or not. Because they've obtained this information, they know that the sector they are going in or the country they are going in, they're entitled to A, B, C, D. So therefore, for any development to happen in the country, information is very critical. And the more you avail that information to private players, to investors, the ease of information, the ease of access to that information is also something that accelerates their rates of decision making in terms of when should we invest in this country, what are we going to invest in. And if there is no information whatsoever, then they won't invest. If there is no information, say on a hospitality industry, the growth over the years, our climate, our beautiful climate that we have, the flora and fauna that we have, the green vegetation, the abundance in water, the labor resources that we have, the political climate and environment in this country. If they don't obtain that information, then definitely they won't make decisions to invest. The development partners too, the UNs, the World Banks, the IMF, they have to access this information on every country. By the way, they also do independent reports and surveys and research about economies and how they're doing over the years. Yeah.
All right, now let's talk about the Speaker of Parliament, Jacob Oulanyah, came out and stated that the view, he was actually questioning the access of information law in Uganda, saying that it has actually served the elite more at the expense of the uneducated or the rural-based people. How true is that statement?
It's true, from the Right Honorable Speaker's observation. It's true, but one of the limitation factors is awareness, lack of awareness. You know, when laws are set up or are made or enacted by Parliament and assented to by the President, it's the mandate of those implementing institutions to accelerate awareness or to create awareness in the public of these laws and how best people can be helped with these laws. If you put out a law and a policy or a guiding framework, and actually citizens don't get enough time to read and understand this law, then it's a limitation. So what we would encourage is first of all to ensure that whoever is introducing a policy and all the implementation arms of that policy should put a lot of emphasis on awareness creation of this law, how it impacts you, how it impacts businesses, because a bad policy is a policy that is not communicated to the people, or that is not communicating to the people that is intended to. So if you make a policy and it's going to affect my business, my nature of life, then I should know. You know, if you don't tell me that, then it's a bad policy. Yeah. So all good policies are better off if they are well explained to the people or to the public. So one of the limitations of access to information law is there was no enough awareness creation that was made. So this is where the strongest, so you find that the elite who can access internet, who can know a lot of stuff on social media and what, they know about all this. But the people, the wananchi in the villages, tend to lose out. Their best communication media is radio and TV probably, but radio to a large extent. Yeah, but if a lot of information is not extended through radio, then they will miss out. Most of them don't have phones. Yeah.
And let's also talk about the issue of information. Some people are denied information in regards to some cases where you would find the media being battered by those in authority, and people would wonder, is it right for the media to deliver this information to people?
Yeah, it's their right, but I will give you this. This is some of the limitations.
Okay.
The exemptions of information accessibility, where the release of the information is likely to prejudice the security or sovereignty of the state. Okay. That is one of the limitations. Interfere with the right to privacy of any other person, then there is going to be denial of access to that information. Okay. That's a limitation factor. Because you also have the National Data Privacy and Protection Act to 2019, the Data Protection and Privacy Act 2019 was enacted, and it guides issues that relate to privacy of your personal data, how it's secured, how it's stored, how it's collected, how it's consumed. If you don't give access to a third party to obtain your information, that law is in any way restricts that. If there is an information collector, say a telco, it obtains information from you. It has your biodata. You're called Sonko, you live here, this is your age, this is your number. And if there is any third party that is coming to take that information, MTN is obliged not to give out that information unless you consent to that.
Okay.
So there are some limitations. Yes, access to information is a right, but again, it's not a requirement, or it's not a guarantee that you will access all whatever information you want in any way that you want. Yes, me as a person, as an institution, we have a right still provided under the law to limit that. First of all, access or obtain, first of all, examine why you're taking this information. Is it for the good? Is it for the worse? Yeah. Then also, if it's relating to security of a nation, then security is also obliged to obtain that information, for their investigations and the like. Yeah.
That is why some journalists are not allowed to capture some events. Okay. Anyhow, if you're just joining in regards to our topic today, we are discussing the we are actually into a discussion where we're talking of the importance or access to information in a sustainable way that can lead the country to development. And on this particular one, where do we draw the same incident? Now, Uganda on the 28th of September had actually joined the rest of the world to mark the International Day for Universal Access to Information. This is actually held annually on the September 28th. And among the issues that we're also discussing here is, you did mention of the value for Ugandans have to understand the importance of the Information Act, that is the Access to Information Act in Uganda. But how are they going to understand this? Which underlining things should the government actually think of before bringing on board these initiatives so that every Ugandan understands the act?
First of all, in its implementation, it has to be a multi-sectoral and disciplinary approach. You know, it should not be left with government, say, or a specific institution under government to lead. Yes, we should have a leader, but it should be done across board. You know, invite the civil society, the private sector organizations, the general public. They should have a stake, yeah, in trying to create awareness of this policy or this law. Yeah. So in the law, it was limited to only government. So you find that government alone cannot do it, because you look at all the mediums of information access, the TVs, the radios, the social media. It's all almost in the private and public domain. So it's the people, the citizens, the private players like Smart24, the TV stations, NBS, and all those. But all these, much as they are regulated by the government, but a lot of what they are doing is determined by their goals and objectives as private sector. So the role of accelerating information should now go to the hands of all, the general public, the private sector players, the civil society, the development partners, and then in that you could achieve, you know. And then also we need to look at increasing coverage of the network in the rural areas. In terms of network, I mean connectivity, I mean the radio frequencies, companies. Yes, the telecommunication companies, the Airtels, the MTNs of Uganda, they should extend coverage to cover the entire nation. So in that, if you're in Gulu or if you're in Nakapiripirit or any other district out there in the countryside, you should be able to access this information. It should not be left for the people in urban areas who have access to electricity. And then also the issue of electricity. It's also very key. You find that most of those areas, the rural areas are not, they're not connected to the grid. So you find that as a country, we need to adopt other sustainable power availability options like solar and wind electricity. And then in that, we should be able to cover at least 90 or 80% of the entire nation. If we all on the national grid, if we have electricity, if we have internet, if we have waves for communication, then I believe access to information will in that automatically rise, and everyone will be aware of the law and everyone will be aware of their rights.
Okay, some civil society groups in Uganda are claiming that people should actually have access information on records, like contracts, tenders, and details in budgets. How can this be possible, and of what importance is this either way?
Government, under its parastatus, Ministry of Finance, has, I think, opened up most of these budget discussions. Every year, as you go into the budget cycle, it has a mandate to go down to the villages, down to the taxpayers, and construct or establish the budget instruments with them. Yeah, and then also we have a project under UBOS. It's called the Open Data Portal, where they're required to provide an open data portal where each and every citizen can go and obtain information. But also on the other hand, government should be able to avail details of most of these contracts and the like. Government, this is under PPDA, Ministry of Finance, NITA, has also come up with the e-government procurement system. It's taking all the entire procurement cycle online. Okay. As we speak, it's already piloted in 10 entities. And it's going to be, after that pilot study, it's going to be expanded now to the wider government, where all institutions, agencies will be mandated to take the entire procurement online. So by that, we're increasing openness, we're increasing accountability, we're increasing access to the contract file, the contracts, access to the requirements for obtaining most of these contracts. The bidding will be online, the evaluations online, you'll be able to get your results, yeah? The notices, the bid notices will be online. So we believe government has done something, though a lot needs to be done.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Because if you're just joining us, we are looking into how you, a Ugandan, can access information in a more preservative manner, or in a way that can actually help for inclusive growth, like we normally say here. In a way, the country can actually add in sustainability of the development of the country, because it is your right to actually access information.
It's your right.
Before any policy is laid on board, you need to have information before it is actually there, so that you can actually give your submission towards it, whether you're okay with it or you are objecting it. That is why there is an access of information for each one of you. But now there is the other concerning issue in regards to accessing information is heading to the internet. And most probably since the elections, we've had issues of Facebook in Uganda. You people who are now in the technology part of it can actually tell us of the impact this has had on the economy. More so the fact that now Facebook was totally banned out of Uganda. The people who actually access it use virtual private networks. I want to understand which impact does it have on the economy? More so even to the access of information for Ugandans.
There is a huge impact, I could tell you. Because first of all, you need to understand that when you look at the dynamics of this population, the biggest percentage of our population are youth. It's a fact. Over 70% of our population are youth. And these youth are inclined to use social media by default. It's very hard to find someone aged 18 spending most of his time on radio. It's very hard. So you find that the biggest percentage of that population or that subgroup relates to social media, relates to the internet. Almost, you find that when you look at the statistics, we spend, especially these years of ours, between 18, 20s, 15, 16, you find that they spend almost 4 hours in a day looking at their phones. In fact, statistics in US, that ratio is close to 8 or 6 hours in a day, just looking at their phones or interacting with their phones. And this means that when you distort or you disrupt anything to do with the social media, since we have around 3.4 million social media subscribers, Facebook, Twitter, and the like, almost 5 million. So you can imagine the impact of banning Facebook from those 5 million users or 5 million Ugandans. It's a huge impact. And now with COVID, there's a disruption that COVID brought in our ecosystem and how we access most of these services and goods. So people and citizens started creating businesses online. And the best way to market those businesses online was social media. You'd find someone setting up a clothing store, a boutique, a bookstore on Facebook. And the biggest clientele would be derived from Facebook. So the impact of Facebook closure is actually big and immense in this country. The adverse effects of closing that is quite huge. Yeah. So it's regrettable per se for most of these social media accounts being blocked, yeah, every now and then. But again, you also look at the wider picture. What security or what the government is trying to emphasize is that they need social media, if not well regulated, can also bring a very huge catastrophe to the political and social affairs scene of this country. You will find that some of the countries have been brought, some of the governments have been brought down by the impact of social media. In other words, most of those uprisings have been fueled by social media. So to me, my take on this is that government should enact laws, you know, that will try and limit, you know, not try and limit the access to Facebook, yes, but try and limit false information spreading on social media. If you don't have the right information, then you should not expose it. You should not throw it out there, because it's going to impact and it's going to affect a lot of people. So the laws that I should or that I would want to see, yes, is laws on false information, spreading of false information. The policy guys at the ministry can help us on that, and then try and enact these laws. If I'm marketing my business, then why close me? You know? Very if I'm marketing my business, my clothes, my phones, my electronics, my gadgets, why close me off? You know. So if I'm spreading now false propaganda, then you close me. You know. If I'm spreading factual information, then why close me? Because I can also give you the references and the like. So we need laws to govern social media usage in this country.
And when he does say we need law that is going to govern, I think the bigger challenge we have on social media is we're having a lot of bloggers who actually deliver wrongful information to people. There was a time when I think people were actually bringing out reports, allegations that the president was actually dead. There was also that time where a number of arrests were actually made on such people. So I think if the government continues to keep up with monitoring such people and regulating the usage of social media, it would actually help and impact onto the flow of information in Uganda. Now, lastly, in your assessment of what is a way to go for Uganda, as we've just concluded the celebration of actually marking the day of information, access to information in the world, where do you think this law can actually lead us in the future?
If it's well understood, yes, we can benefit from it. So there is a need to create more awareness, and then there is also need to strengthen access to information points. You know, those officers in these communication and ICT office or functions in these ministries and the like. You know, each and every entity has a communication officer. Yes. But you find that 30% of them know anything about these laws. So we need to sensitize them, and then since they are the actionable people down there, they are the guys that collect this information and disseminate it. Then they should be aware of these laws. So there is need of a training and sensitization of most of these people. And then we need to expand universal access to internet coverage across the country. So as NITA, we are doing that, though now we are limited to only connecting sites that are within the public domain, ministries, departments, and agencies. We have a total of around 700 sites now, plus, but there is a lot that the private sector needs to do, the likes of the telcos, to expand that coverage, and then also lower the prices of internet, you know, because it's an enabler, and then develop access to information tools, the assistive technologies, say for example, for the people with disabilities, you know, those tools and devices they use, because much as we are developing all these ICTs and tools, we should be mindful of the people with disabilities, people with vision impairments, people that can't speak, people that can't hear. You know, as we're building all these technologies, we need to include them. The websites, are they accessible by people with disabilities? Yes, as NITA have developed guidelines and standards for websites to also include those people with disabilities, but a lot needs to be done. And because then also
maybe the other thing, if I can cut you short, the 12 you did mention of expanding the internet coverage to the country.
Yes, and lower the prices,
the tariffs. The prices, yes. Because the issue was 12% tax that was included after they scrapped off OTT.
Yeah,
because the number.
So you have to weigh. You have to weigh. You have to put on a scale. Do we stay with OTT or? So I believe OTT was a blunder. So good enough, government has removed it. Yes,
but then also this tax looks to be very
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. The tariffs on these bundles and the bandwidth charges need to greatly, and they need to be reduced. Such that, and of course, government can come in, but this is mainly a private sector-led growth or development or initiative. But then also UCC can regulate it, because other economies around us, their prices to the tariffs and connectivity are a bit low. Yes, we are landlocked. Of course, Kenya has a bigger access to the terrestrial, the undersea cables from that Indian Ocean. Yes, they have access. So their transportation cost is much more lower. So we also need, as public, to understand these dynamics. What brings is internet prices high compared to our neighbors. So we need to look into also how many people use the internet, because it also communicates to the demand and supply of these. If there are so many people using internet, then definitely there will be great demand, and the supply will be higher, therefore prices will go much lower. So we also need to adopt web content accessibility guidelines that cover a large recommendations of making web content more accessible. And then also promote the use of ICTs. These gadgets, these ICT tools can greatly help in trying to promote access to information.
Okay. How about if the government can also add more of the schools, because mainly ICT skills need to be initiated way back from the grassroots.
Government has done something, though not to the required potential. UCC, there is a program called the Regional Communication Development. It's called RCDF. And that RCDF has tried to connect and build ICT labs across schools. But due to budget constraints, I think their coverage now is not to that level. But then also under NITA and UNICEF, with support from UNICEF, we've built Colibri, which is an e-learning platform. And we also encourage people out there to go to these websites, go to NITA's website, go to UNICEF's website, download Colibri or log on to Colibri. Colibri is an e-learning portal that government has built, and therefore I encourage most of Ugandans to go there, get this information, buy some few bundles and connect. Learning should not stop just because of COVID.
Because of COVID.
Yeah.
Because it seems schools will have to get rid of some physical classes in the next few years.
So this whole pandemic has brought a lot of disruption, and it's our core responsibility and mandate as people to keep up the pace. Think outside the box. We should leave our comfort zones. And start brainstorming and coming up with new ideas of how we are going to better ourselves and the country.
So true there. And of course I had Mr. Joshua from NITA Uganda. We're discussing the access to information in sustainable development in Uganda. Era gwe ali eyo ndowooza oyina kyotegeddemu nti oyina kikkakatako okulaba nti ofuna information, you receive the information, because it is your right as well as a person to receive information, whether from the government or non-government organization.
Ate ekirala Mwami Sonko, ekirala kye mbadde njagala okugamba bannayuganda nti emikutu gavumenti erina gyetaddewo. Bw'oba wansi eyo gy'oli ku ssomero, waliwo essomero eryafudde, waliwo ekkubo eryafudde, twataddewo emikutu. Waliwo GCIC, the Government Citizen Interaction Center, bali wano mu Kampala. Ogenda ku Ministry ICT osobola obbasangawo. Balina toll free lines. Kuba wansi eyo ogambe nti bridge yaffe yafudde. So eyo center kyekola connecting ebizibu byo ne respective ministry or department ekivunaanyizibwako. Ogamba nti kubo lyaffe lyafudde, bridge yaffe yaguddemu. Government n'ogikubira essimu, waliwo toll free lines twataddewo. Oba n'ogenda ku Government Citizen Interaction Center, ekizibu kyo amangu ddala baba ajja kiddamu. Eddagala lyatuweddeko madwaliro kati okola otya,
ndowooza mulina kyemufunyeeko ku nsonga eyo era ddembe lyo okulaba nti ofuna information mu ngeri yonna. Era tubadde ne Mwami Joshua waneeno nga mu ngeri eyo ndowooza we are done with the topical discussion, but meanwhile I will continue shortly. Keep it SMB.
Thank you.